In this module, we will be talking about emotions. Simply put, you cannot talk about eating disorders without talking about emotions. Eating disorder symptoms affect emotions, and emotions affect eating disorder symptoms. They go hand in hand. So let's begin by understanding why and how this is the case. So this is what is known as the emotional curve. In general, we all have the ability to feel every emotion, be it anger, happiness, sadness, anxiety, etc. And every emotion has a beginning, a peak, and an end. In the case of someone who has an eating disorder, the eating disorder symptom, be it restriction or a binge purge episode, for example, will interrupt the curve and create an immediate relief. Let me give you an example. A person feels very preoccupied with the desire to lose weight. In consequence, their anxiety around this issue will rise, and one day they decide to skip a meal. What is relevant to consider here is that the person is not bad intentioned. They are merely trying to feel better, to feel more in control. And unfortunately, it will work, and there will be an immediate relief of that anxiety. Things start to get tricky when the person's emotion is both triggered by the eating disorder and soothed by it. For example, the person experiences a binging episode at a restaurant outing with friends that leads to shame, which is then interrupted and soothed by a purging behavior. Over the course of time, this person will begin to resort to eating disorder symptoms to manage not only emotions related to eating and body image, but to manage every emotion. Let me give you an example. This same person feels uncomfortable about an upcoming exam. Here, the anxiety will rise, and like this person did to manage the anxiety related to their body image, they will skip a meal and there will be a similar result, so an immediate relief of that anxiety. A couple of days later, they get into a fight with a friend. Here, the anger will rise, and they will decide to engage in compulsive exercise, which will again lead to an immediate relief of that emotion. As we can see, a new emotional curve emerges. This emotional curve is much smaller, and the peak represents the maximum emotional intensity that this person can comfortably tolerate. Any emotion that goes beyond this peak will likely trigger the desire to use an eating disorder symptom. What is interesting is that this is even the case for positive emotions, because since we are talking about maximum intensities, a positive emotion which is intense can be just as uncomfortable and overwhelming as a negative emotion, and thus trigger the desire to use an eating disorder symptom. Over the course of time, the person becomes accustomed to this new peak and will have a tendency to want to cut the emotion sooner and sooner, which inevitably will lead them to resort to more and more symptoms. And so, as we can see, in the case of someone who struggles with an eating disorder, there is a vulnerability to become very reliant on eating disorder symptoms to manage their emotions instead of allowing the natural emotional curve to run its course.